I'm Mark Searle, and I'm a lecturer and industry fellow in the Sutarja Center for Entrepreneurship in the College of Engineering at UC Berkeley. And I also have the good fortune to coach and train entrepreneurs and corporate innovators around the world. And today I want to talk about one of my favorite themes to discuss with entrepreneurs. And it's something that I think has become even more relevant in the time of the current COVID-19 pandemic, although I think it's actually a relevant theme at all times. And that is the title of my talk here, which is called Don't Stop Starting, which sounds like a contradiction, but I'm going to get into a little bit of what I mean by that. And so to help us kind of set a framework for what I'm talking about, I'm going to share a few slides with you just so that we have a sort of a common understanding of terminology and what I mean by starting in the context of creating new businesses. So let me set up some slide sharing here quickly and just jump into the question of what is the common goal of all organizations, so we can start from that understanding. And I argue that every business strives to increase its own value, maybe just to maintain its own value. And when we talk about the value, that can be measured as the stock price for a publicly traded company. It could be the valuation that a venture capitalist puts on an investment, what we call the pre-money or post-money valuation. In certain contexts, it might be the value that's given by a business appraising firm. It doesn't matter. What you find is, in my opinion, that all businesses are trying to increase their own value. And so sometimes they do that by making more money. Sometimes they do that by getting more users, even if the users aren't paying. Sometimes they get that just by creating new technologies that they haven't even sold yet. But somehow you need to increase your value. And so how do we do that? Well, value is inherently determined by other people. So as I said, if it's the VCs that are setting the value, if it's the public markets, your value is set by other people, which means in a way it's an opinion. And so the value is going to be determined by how much value you can deliver to others. So delivering value to others is the only source of value for you. And so if our goal is to increase our value, then the only way to do that is to increase our value to others. So deliver more value to other people. And we can do that a number of ways. We can deliver the same value to more people. We can deliver more value to the same people. We can do both. But this is a framework that is going to come into play when I talk about why we want to not, as I said, stop starting. So how do we talk about startups in the current environment? Well, Steve Blank and Eric Ries and that whole lean startup world has really created some useful frameworks for thinking about, for example, what is a startup? And Steve Blank, many years ago, came up with the idea that a startup is a temporary organization designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model, which is a powerful thought, because what it says is that startups really hope to become companies. They aren't like big companies. They're a separate thing, and they have a separate mission. And it's really all about finding a scalable business model. And there's a lot of different tools. What do we mean by a business model? I'll say the business model is a description of how our organization delivers value and captures value for itself. That is to say, increases its own value by delivering value to others. So that's what a business model is. And there's a lot of interesting and useful tools out in the world to capture the description of your business model. My colleague Iklak Sidhu at the Sutarja Center, the head of the Sutarja Center, has a framework in innovation engineering. My old friend and colleague Andre Marquis at Hypershift Systems in San Francisco has developed a really nice framework for characterizing a business model. Perhaps the most famous is Alex Osterwalder's business model canvas, which has also been adapted into the lean canvas as another alternative. So and I don't care which one you use, but somehow you need to characterize a business model and then validate it. And so we summarize this idea that when you're starting your business, you're searching, and then you move into execution. And so this is the binary that has kind of become the summary of the current mode of thinking about um, running startups. There's two chapters. There's a search chapter, and then you close that book or you turn the page, and now you're into execution once you've fully validated your business model. But let's take just a second and think about what is it that we're doing when we're searching. And a lot of you, again, who have thought about this and who have worked on it and teach it, understand when we're searching, what we're really talking about is experimentation. And the experimentation, I like to use the Blankian framework of the scientific method. We articulate hypotheses about our business model, and we design experiments, hence the word experimentation. And then we run the experiments, and then we either validate our hypothesis or we change our hypothesis until we get something that is validated, and then we execute. And this is I'll take just one moment to say that, whenever I say this to a room full of scientists and engineers, somebody raises their hand and says that if the experiment is talking to people, conducting customer interviews, doing what we call customer discovery, then that's not really an experiment. And of course, it is an experiment. That's exactly the kind of experiment that people do in the social sciences. So anthropology, economics, and all of the social sciences are based on experiments that involve research with human subjects. So just to answer that piece. But when you think about it, what I'm saying is that we can think about search and execution not as a binary that says first we search, once we found what we're searching for, then we go execute. That's actually a very powerful and very attractive idea because of the fact that it's so simple. Because we can finish this search process and then go and execute. And that's attractive. It's so attractive that a lot of entrepreneurs try to rush into execution. And good execution will be critical to success and scaling. But I think it's more useful to think about these terms not as just search and execution, but really what's behind the term search. And I just outlined that as experimentation. And then to say that in addition to or after the experimentation is the optimization. And when you think about it in those terms, then I think it becomes a little bit more clear that you need to keep doing both. And that is the idea that I try to capture with the idea that I say, don't stop starting. So as I've just reframed it, those are all the slides I prepared, but now I'm going to do some more, talk about some examples. So when you think about it, if you talk about experimentation as testing your hypotheses about your business model, and that's a critical part of the startup journey because you need to validate that business model in order to execute it, as we've said, or as I would say, optimize and continuously optimize. Because I think that the mistake that entrepreneurs make, particularly first-time entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs, is that they can get into this idea that now that I've validated my business model, I'm done. I can just focus on creating value for my customer segments, or as we say in the jargon of at least Alex Osterwalder's framework, delivering my value propositions to my customer segments by means of my channels and so on. I mean, again, I don't care which framework you use, but that's ends up being too static and doesn't reflect the real world. And so my argument is that, in fact, if your goal is to increase your own value, you need to continue experimentation all the time, because that's the only way that you will be able to continue to deliver more value for more people. Why? Because the people are changing all the time. Another mistake that that young entrepreneurs make, particularly entrepreneurs coming out of the technical fields, is to think that their customers aren't human beings. They think that they're institutions. They think, well, I sell to the healthcare system, or I sell to banks. You don't sell to banks. You sell to individuals within banks, and the individuals' opinions change over time. And so continuing to experiment, which we said is the key to starting, that search process is part of the temporary organization of the startup. That search process has to continue. And I said I'd give you some examples. I'm going to give you a couple of examples from my own life. back in 1999, 98, 99, and 2000. I was working in a company called Bamboo.com, where I was the COO. And we developed some technology, which was very powerful. It was actually a photo and video sharing platform on the web, even in those early days. And we went to market and had a successful IPO doing online virtual tours for real estate listings. Very powerful business. We had a huge, but that wasn't where we started. We had to find that repeatable and scalable business model, which was delivering virtual tours for online real estate. But even though we were doing that successfully, and we had focus on delivering that, at the same time, we had a activity in our company, which was to look at what we had, namely our technology that we developed, and look for other applications of it. That is to say, do customer discovery and discover who else needs what we have, and for who else can we deliver value. Why would we do that? Because by delivering more value to more people, we increase our own value. So I said we had a successful IPO on the NASDAQ, which was true, but based on selling virtual tours for online real estate listings. But what was really compelling was when the business then was able to expand and host all of the images on eBay. So we became the outsourced image hosting for eBay auctions, because the uploading of a virtual tour for distribution to home buyers was no different from uploading an image. It was a little bit different. I won't go into all that. But it turned out we had the technology, and we could clearly define a new business model with a different revenue stream, a different value proposition, and it was eBay auction. Posters could post images or even short videos. And that is what took us not just from an IPO on the NASDAQ, a publicly traded company, but to $1 billion valuation on the NASDAQ. So this idea of finding a scalable business model, but continuing to experiment and finding new additional business models that you can deliver by expanding your customer segments, or by expanding the value propositions you're delivering for those customer segments, ends up being what really can take you to new heights, as it did in our case in the 1999-2000 timeframe. If you think about your favorite huge tech companies today, they're all doing this, and they've all done this successfully. So if you think about Amazon, Amazon came to market as an online bookseller and then expanded outside of books into a lot of other markets. Direct to consumer selling over the web. But if you actually look at their financials today, an enormous part of their business, and one of the most profitable segments, is a B2B segment. It's the Amazon Web Services. Why is that? Well, it's because Amazon looked at what they had a scalable, repeatable, phenomenally growing, but actually not profitable for a very, very long time, a repeatable and scalable, not profitable business model for consumers. And they had built this capability, which was the hosting capability. Then they resold their hosting capability as a B2B product. That's Amazon Web Services. And now they've taken their company to a whole new level. If you think for a second about Apple, it's exactly the same story. And these big tech companies that are enormously successful all continue to experiment and find new markets. I remember, I've been around long enough that I remember before the iPhone. And I remember when they launched the iPhone, and when it was rumored that it might be coming out, and people thought it was crazy. Why would Apple go into the phone business? Why would you do that? Well, they did that because they proved that they could deliver new value to new customers, or new value to existing customers, and continue to expand the value they create. So the examples go on and on. And really my point here, the key takeaway that I want to leave you with, is that when you start a new venture, and you're in that search mode and you're experimenting, and you start to get traction, and you start to get the repeatable and scalable business model is becoming clear, and you can go and execute it, don't fall into the trap of only executing on that one thing. And I'll give you one more example, which is actually an example of a failure because we didn't do this. So I was, it's not strictly a failure. It's just, it was a much smaller success than it should have been. I was CEO of a company called Adamark Technologies, later called Sensage. And the company raised a lot of venture capital. And we came to market and we thought we would do hosted data analytics. So we thought we would host big data analytics in the cloud. This was so long ago that we didn't have the term big data and we didn't have the term cloud. So the customers weren't comfortable putting their data on our servers, and they said, we need an installed solution at our place. We said, great, installed solution it is, that's it. And we didn't pay any attention to the fact that the world kept changing. The customers kept changing. Those same customers who were saying we would never put our data in the cloud later, they were putting their data in the cloud, and we were no longer positioned to do that because we didn't stay close. We didn't keep experimenting. We locked in on one solution with one technological answer for one set of customers, and the customers themselves change. And that brings me back to where I started, which is this idea that you should maintain your experimentation and maintain your search mentality, even while you're optimizing your existing business model, even when you're in business and making revenue, continuing to listen carefully to your customers and understanding how they're changing and how their needs are changing is critical. And goodness, the COVID-19 pandemic has showed this, because every single customer's needs changed on a dime earlier this year, earlier in 2020. And if you weren't in position to listen to how their needs are changing, then you would be slow in responding to those changes. So that's the message I want to leave you. I summarize it with that tight phrase, don't stop starting. And what I mean by that is maintain your search approach, maintain your search attitude and your experimental mindset throughout your journey, even after you've started to optimize a known business model. I'll be happy to talk with anybody more about this and look forward to seeing you in one of my classes, either on campus or at your location. Thank you and have a good day.